What opportunities are still left in the Project Cargo market? We will talk about it at length in this online edition of the Project Cargo Summit 2020.
Project Cargo Summit 2020 is made possible by Port of Rotterdam, Liebherr, Lubbers Logistics Group, Mstar and the Steinweg Group.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Project Cargo Summit 2020 online. My name is Tobias Pievers, and I am the editor of the Project Cargo Journal, and I will be your host today. We are live from the Port of Rotterdam, a port which has major plans to grow in breakbulk and Project Cargo. Emiel Hoogstede, Vice President Commercial at the Port of Rotterdam, had wanted to welcome you in person, but unfortunately that is still not possible. So instead we will give you the next best thing, a video.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Project Cargo Summit 2020. My name is Emiel Hoogstede and I'm Vice President Commercial at the Port of Rotterdam Authority. Thank you for participating in such large numbers, despite the exceptional circumstances. I would like to congratulate the organizers with putting together an attractive and varied program for the next 2 days, all online. Although I prefer and look forward to meeting you all in person again during next year's event, 10 and 11 February, here in Rotterdam. Let's hope that by that time COVID is a thing of the past. I regret that certain companies in breakbulk have been hit hard by the crisis. For instance, Heavy Lift Project Cargo saw a decrease in turnover. Luckily, in this segment we see new projects on the horizon, among other things in connection with the realization of various new wind farms. The Port of Rotterdam saw a modest decline in breakbulk volumes in the first 6 months, a decrease of 6.9% to a total of 2.8 million tons. This can be attributed to our status as Europe's most versatile breakbulk port. The different clusters in the breakbulk segment are all fully represented here in Rotterdam. That's one of the reasons why I'm confident that in Rotterdam we will achieve our ambition, becoming Europe's leading breakbulk hub. Together with our breakbulk community, we can facilitate the entire breakbulk supply chain, which means we can service you every step of the way, and we can guarantee, always guarantee, a suitable solution. We share data, we share knowledge. We help companies expand their business. We ensure a healthy business climate. We continuously invest in our port. By now I can proudly say that we receive some 200 vessel calls per month from 75 different breakbulk shipping lines. This all has to do with our versatility as breakbulk port and the reliability of our services, but also with our approach to digitalization and sustainability. Our electric cranes are a good case in point, as are the solar panels on our warehouses or discounts on port use for vessels that have a green award or score well in the Environmental Ship Index. Furthermore, Rotterdam is the home base to Europe's largest fleet of floating cranes and shear legs. To underline this, I'm recording this word of welcome here at Bonnemees, one of the providers of these services in Rotterdam and owner of the heaviest floating crane in our port, able to lift an impressive 1,800 tons. Let me round up by saying that everyone in breakbulk is very welcome in Rotterdam, and I look forward to speak to you to see how we can help you to strengthen your business. Thank you. On behalf of the Port of Rotterdam Authority, I wish you a very pleasant and constructive summit. Sit back, relax and enjoy the show.
At the start of this year, our world has changed dramatically. But as Aristotle said, it is at our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. And that is what this event is all about, looking for light, or rather, opportunities. We will do that together. As you may have noticed, our webinar platform has a chat function, and I want you to use it vigorously. I want you to ask questions and participate. Not in the least space, because your questions are probably better than mine. In the first part of today's program, we will talk about how the pandemic has affected the shipping and logistics market, and how companies can still find credit in a time of crisis. Before we start the program, I want to share a poll with you. I want to know how you currently feel about the Project Cargo outlook. Are you optimistic that a recovery will happen soon? Are you worried that this will be a very severe crisis? Are you confident that you can still secure cargo? Or are you on the fence because rates are recovering, but this has been a slow process? You can answer this poll in the webinar chat, and we will get back to this after the first presentation. So we will now go to our first speaker of the day, which is BIMCO's Chief Shipping Analyst, Peter Sand, who will share with us his latest thinking about future shipping demand.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Project Cargo Summit 2020 virtual edition only. My name is Peter Sand. I'm the Chief Shipping Analyst of the world's largest shipping association, BIMCO. Please allow me to give my sincere thanks to Han van Blanken for inviting me originally, and for Tobias and Ariane also to helping making this possible. I will be pleased to share with you our future shipping demand outlook, and following that, take the Q&A session. Hopefully, some of this will spur an interest, will also deliver questions and comments from you. So without further ado, let's just be absolutely sure that we all know that BIMCO is here to provide leadership for the global shipping industry. And what many of you may know BIMCO for, we'll get back to that. Project Cargo, heavy lift, break bulk, many dear names for a wonderful industry. Above all, it is a matter of world merchandise trade. Is it growing? Is it not? What is limiting right now the extent of this demand growth? As you can see here, our expectations are certainly not for a shift in demand ASAP. We do not expect a V-shaped recovery like you can see indicated here in optimistic and pessimistic scenario from VTO. Our baseline right now is to be found in the red rectangle, which is telling you that you should expect a gradual recovery only. But working in a business with a plethora in variety of goods, there should be some comfort found indeed for you, even though 2020 is coming on the back of many troublesome years for the Project Cargo and break bulk business as such. It has been many different years, difficult years, where you have basically seen partners and companies being forced into to marriages which they perhaps did not seek themselves, but basically due to the fact that this is an industry under pressure. It is something that can deliver more or less anything, but also mainly ends up sometimes especially when times are tough for the main shipping sectors, they end up taking whatever is left on the quay. Much of it is here on the screen in front of you, but much of that is also not to be seen from the easy perspective when looking at data, looking at numbers, looking at daily COVID-19 cases, which I'm sure you're fed up listening to, just like I am. It is a fact that what is going on in the world right now from a global health crisis, this pandemic, is surely impacting the demand of every shipping sector in many various ways. I'm sure that you also know someone who's working with tankers, perhaps someone who may be working with container shipping, and you will without doubt hear some good stories also coming from their mouth in terms of solid earnings, and perhaps even more than that earlier in the year. So it's a little bit going against the grain. But one of the key factors that is driving your market, I'm sure, is the crude oil prices. I'm thinking that you need a bit more than $60 a barrel in order to really feel the tension, in order to really feel demand is nearing. And as you can see with the graphics that I have provided for you here, it is a flat development right now, with recently here in September oil prices going a bit more south until only earlier last week, when we saw again an increase in the prices. But for shipping, it mainly remains a matter of lower fuel prices, as also indicated in this case. Some of you with a scrubber on board may also note that a fuel price spread of only $33 per metric ton may not be what you had in mind when investing in a scrubber earlier in the year. What else is affecting your market? Well, I think it's fair to say that industrial production is affecting your market. Global infrastructure spending. I mean, many of you have carried also huge gantry cranes all over the world in order to facilitate ports and scaling up terminals to receive ultra-large container ships. But right now, as also clearly indicated here, you see that monthly industrial production has only recovered in China, whereas the rest of the world is still damaging low. On the right-hand side, well, that's basically the only really strong growing part of the business right now. It will remain so, at least that's our forecast for years to come. Installation of offshore windmills. So watch out for that market indeed, is how we see it, regardless of course, the pain that you will face from onshore businesses, including industrial production. Oil production takes place onshore and offshore. For you guys, obviously, offshore is the most important part of it, but it remains also a fact that offshore oil drilling and production is so much more expensive than onshore. So there is a delayed effect, of course, in terms of oil production offshore and onshore. We do not need to go further back than 2014 to see the most recent dramatic drop in oil prices, and we have seen another dramatic drop in oil prices back in only April this year. When something like that happens, obviously investments in offshore drilling facilities is coming to a halt. But it remains also a fact that the world is full of ships, and the world is certainly full of very large crude carriers. You may, I'm sure, have heard about floating storage, and I can tell you that it's not all about floating storage anywhere. You may have filled more oil into onshore facilities, but without doubt, these ships are not all doing floating storage, but they may be delayed in their discharge. So this is a term that we call logistical floating storage, but it's not traders making an extra buck out of it. But early in the year, we did surely see someone making an extra buck out of it. If we, shortly after, we also see that the multi-purpose ships are also all over the world. And that is basically also an integral part of my ideas of making sure that we're on the same page here, that we're on the same page of where is the world as such moving ahead. Because none of you, I'm sure, is working in an isolated local geographical situation, unless you have a 10-year charter doing nothing but that. It's the whole world which is your playground. And speaking of playground, and speaking of someone having fun earlier in the year, this is only the previous 12 months, and as you can clearly see, this is extraordinary high freight rates. If I were to put a 10-year or the previous decade into your slide deck here, you would see more or less freight rates climbing somewhere down below. But for us to be a bit more optimistic today than anything else, I've just decided to go with the 12-month horizon here. And just also concluding that crude oil tankers and product tankers, which you can see on your right-hand side, is starting to feel the pressure. And why is that? Well, that is of course due to the unprecedented destruction of oil demand. As you can see here, there is somewhat of a recovery in the making in 2020. If you look at the EIA and their most recent outlook for oil demand, falling by 8.3 million barrels a day in 2020, mostly in the first quarter and the second quarter of the year. The rebound is likely to come around for 2021. But please be absolutely sure that we are not bringing it all back, and the fleet is not completely coming to a halt. So before we really see a positive takeaway from that, well, there may be another reason to take a look at something which is much closer at heart and much closer to me also. So allow me just for a short moment to share with you this monster. It's not only a monster, it's a jewel. Because this is offshore heavy lift and project cargo contracts from BIMCO, all in one piece. Make sure, especially when times get tough, be accurate on your contracts and clauses. And this is the one thing that I was looking forward to share with you in my opening statement, because if you do not are familiar with the works of BIMCO, I'm sure you have heard about BIMCO's contracts and clauses, perhaps also our shipping market analytical team, because we are working hard also sharing our thoughts on the market like we are with you this morning. And we also like very much to put things into perspective. So those of you who have not been around our website, I can only encourage you to take a deep dive into the three pieces that we have prepared for you, putting the previous decade into perspective. And one of the key things to take away also into your business is, of course, that the size of the fleet is still essential. Looking at multi-purpose ships and project cargo carriers, demolition was high after the global financial crisis. It has petered down somewhat ever since, but it remains a fact that when demand is only growing slowly, there is only one thing to cut, and that's the fleet, because too many ships chasing too few cargoes is putting a downward pressure on freight rates. These are some of the very short but brilliant captures from the previous decades in order to set the scene, and in order also perhaps to understand your own business and how that have been affected and interacted by in particular dry bulk, but also container shipping, as they of course are one of the, you can call it the cannibals of your business. Wrapping up here very shortly, let me just share with you some of the thoughts that we also have on short sea shipping. And let me make sure to you that we see global supply chains changing on the back of this COVID-19 outbreak. We absolutely see that impact mostly intra-Asian business, but surely also intra-European business. Ro-ro shipping is already a competitor to you, but when global supply chains are changing, obviously it will have an impact also outside liner business on various project cargo, break bulk, any kind of other business where you may find yourself doing business. We have seen also in the past in deep sea business the likes of the banana boats, and now it's time for break bulk and project cargo and automotive to feel the pressure of liner shipping cannibalizing on what used to be your exclusive cargoes. What we have here is just an indication of another market which is completely turned around by the COVID-19. Carriers have blanked sailings across the board, and by that developed a piece of magic. They are right now sitting at the highest spot rates for more than 8 years, and it's just puzzling that something like that can happen right now during times of crisis. But rest assured that a dry bulk market which is good is easing the pressure on break bulk. And is the market good for dry bulk right now? Well, according to these charts, it is. And it's fair to say also that it's a little bit of the bumblebee because this is surely driven very much forward by one thing and one thing only. 5 letters only, and that's China. China really going against the grain here. They may have seen a negative GDP growth rate for the first quarter of 2020, but they are absolutely astonishing in bringing in more dry cargo. Be very much assured that is a positive thing for you. This is a 2-day conference. At the end of day 2, you will be hearing about the future of offshore wind. Wrapping up my session, I can only encourage you to make use of our innovative new solution for editing charter parties and contracts. It's called SmartCon. You will find WindTime in there, which will be one of your favorite tools soon, I'm very sure. Stay in touch. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. I thank you so much for your attention and wish you a wonderful conference, and look very much forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Peter, for this interesting presentation. We just, before your presentation, we asked our viewers to answer a poll to see how they feel about the Project Cargo outlook. And the results just came back, and 37% of the viewers say they are quite optimistic about a speedy recovery of the Project Cargo market. Does that surprise you?
I did not vote for a speedy recovery, to be honest. So in that regard, it surely surprised me. As I guess I tried to make clear in my opening here, is that we see only a gradual recovery, and that goes also for Project Cargo as it goes for the wider shipping interest. But I'm very pleased to see that optimism is unchallenged in the business, and that's the wonderful takeaway from that poll, in my view.
Perfect. And you mentioned offshore wind is still, the wind market is booming. Oil markets, however, are currently struggling. With offshore wind on such a growth trajectory, do you feel that will be sufficient to sort of help the industry withstand this period in which other markets are down?
I think it's fair to make strike a difference between what is of political interest and what is of pure market economic interest. I saw also a bit of a debate on that in the chat just following the presentation, where one of the participants was addressing the fact that he saw low oil prices also meant low interest in offshore wind turbine installations. I see it somewhat differently in the sense that that offshore wind turbine installation is very much driven on politics predominantly. But of course, when oil prices are as low as they are currently, some projects may get the right rubber stamp due to the fact that the alternatives, be it crude oil or gas, is simply cheap still in compared to wind turbine.
You also mentioned competing sectors. That is one thing that has always been an important topic when we look at an outlook. You mentioned ro-ro shipping also. I know ro-ro shipping has been quite active in chasing Project Cargo, but we've also seen quite heavy capacity reductions there. Do you think this will sort of minimizes the impact on the multipurpose and breakbulk carriers, or?
I think from an overall term, this is not a market where demand is booming. We're not about to see a growth rate in demand of 10 or 15% tomorrow. So the fact that demand growth is only a couple of percentage points, it means that a recovery of freight rates and earnings as such is likely to be somewhat protracted in our view. And you mentioned low fleet growth in ro-ro. I think also we have seen quite low fleet growth also in many of the Project Cargo and heavy lift sectors, depending on how much you split the fleet into subsectors. Obviously, some some of the most prolific deliveries in recent years, where it has really been a matter of a specialized ship, uniquely designed a cable layer, or a ship which is capable of decommissioning also the offshore oil rigs. There's always a business for those, even though they may only have one thing that they can do. If that one thing is unique in the market, that is what makes them special. And I think that is also the advice, or at least the thing that I see in the project cargo market. If you can do something special, that gives you the upper hand. If you are just a piece of the bread and butter with that everyone can deliver what you can do, you are constantly stuck in a price war. So the more specialized and more unique and advanced services you deliver as an operator and owner, the better your position is for future business.
And when you say offer something unique, do you mean looking at heavy lift companies, for instance, that they move away, or not move away, but start new activities, for instance, installing turbines offshore or things like that? We have seen quite some activity going on in that side. Is that the kind of things you're talking about, or can you give a few examples?
I think those are great examples. It is a matter of building new business, especially when some other sectors are cannibalizing what used to be your home turf, and that is basically what you need constantly to be on the move in the search for new areas, because you are unlikely to be capable of defending your old turf forever. So you need constantly to seek new markets, and those you mentioned there, Tobias, are brilliant examples of where business is growing strongly right now. And the more specialized you are to cater for that need, the better positioned you are, in my view.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you for your time today. We will go to the next presentation. So you got to spend money to make money, but if you're not making any money, that can be a tough thing to do. So what if you need financing to chase a new opportunity or to keep business going? Our next two speakers will tell you what it is that is still possible with the banks, and what you can do if the banks say no. Please welcome Michiel Steeman of Zuiderzee Capital and Michael de Visser of NIBC.
Yeah, good morning, all of you. Indeed, a small presentation about how to find money and relief amidst a crisis. My name is Michael de Visser from NIBC Bank, and I will do later on a small presentation of NIBC plus the views on the market, where Michiel will tell a little bit more about the alternative options. So, Michiel, maybe you want to start with presenting Zuiderzee?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Tobias. My name is Michiel Steeman. I work for Zuiderzee Capital, based in The Hague, the Netherlands. Zuiderzee is a financial consultancy boutique focused specifically on maritime and logistics, focusing on assisting in financing ships and boxes, but also the broader logistical landscape. We're only 4 years in existence, but our managing partners are all ex-bankers, experienced bankers with a background in either ABN AMRO shipping department or DVB bank shipping departments. But we're more than just ex-bankers. We are also working closely together with operational partners within Zuiderzee. We have operational partners, people that actually manage ships in our shareholder base, and that allows us to combine our own financial expertise with the operational expertise of our partners in order to provide solutions for our clients. What do? We do debt sourcing on behalf of ship owners or asset owners in the maritime space, equity sourcing. We assist in M&A. We also assist in restructuring consultancy, in other words, amending an existing financial structure, maybe driven by the market circumstances, whereby we need to adjust the capital structure, and then we can work for either ship owners or banks. And increasingly, and I think that's relating to the topic of today, we are asked by ship owners or shipping companies hey, my existing banking relationships are providing less capacity for future expansion. How can we cope? What is out there? What alternatives are out there to finance our capex? And that's what keeps us busy, and is of course also a topic of today.
Yeah, let me then tell us something about NIBC swiftly. I don't have a slide, but we have this year our 75th anniversary. We were founded after the Second World War as a restructuring bank for the Dutch economy. We are currently listed at Euronext, but there is a takeover bid from Blackstone. So by the end of the year, we might be taken off the stock markets. In shipping, we are active for, 5 decades, focus on asset financing. So we finance the ships, not so much the supply chain. But obviously, we understand the dynamics in the market. It is focus on dry bulk and tankers with 10 people. We have around 1 billion in portfolio. And if you look at NIBC in total, about 50% is retail mortgages and the other 50% corporate, which is divided over commercial real estate, digital infrastructure, fintech, tech, leverage finance, receivable finance. So we have a lot of activities that we do within the bank, but clear focus on certain sectors. Talking about banking, because I think that is where everybody's videoed in instead of dialed in these days. If you look at banking, we see two big trends. We see, on the one hand, increased regulation, and on the other hand, disintermediation. So if you look at regulation, what's happening? Traditionally, banks finance on the basis of equity that they have. They can build a balance sheet. If you have a sovereign debt, you don't have to have a lot of equity. If you do retail mortgages, you need to have more equity. If you do corporate lending, even more. And if you have equity, that's the maximum. So if you do finance the equity of companies, you also have to keep a lot of equity yourself in your balance sheet. So a balance sheet of a bank all depends about how much equity do you have and what is the mix of financings that you provide towards individuals and corporates. But what you saw over the last years is that due to regulations, banks have to keep more equity for the activities that they do, which means that either you have to increase your equity, which is very difficult in today's market with share prices and returns that banks make. On the other hand, you can also, of course, lower your balance sheet. And that is what a lot of banks in the past years did, of course, to deleverage and reduce their balance sheet. The second thing that we see in regulations is that where banks had a lot of flexibility to help clients, we now are forced to report such changes in transactions. So what we see is that if we, for example, give a waiver to a client for a financial covenant, or if we gave a relief on a repayment, we have to increase again the amount of equity that we keep for that client. So that is where we ultimately, for example, in Corona, we see a balancing act. On the one hand, as a bank, you want to help your clients. You want to make sure that they are able to survive a crisis. On the other hand, if we as a bank give a relief in a quarterly repayment or semi-annual repayment, it means that as a bank you have to keep more equity for the next 2 years. So that's a quite substantial, of course, effect that we do. So in that respect, we like to really discuss with our clients the necessity for the repayment, or that we can do other things together. If we give a waiver on a financial covenant, we have to also increase some equity. If we give 2 waivers, we again have to go to a forborne status, which is 2 years of equity. So you really see that regulations have an impact on what we do with our clients. We want to help clients, but we still have to make sure that as a bank we can continue to operate with the equity that we have. Then the second trend, which I mentioned, disintermediation. Because of the fact that banks have larger equity stakes that they need to keep and a smaller balance sheet, we have, of course, less and less possibilities to finance. But what you also see is historically, what was the purpose of a bank? We have saving accounts, and then we lend it onto the market for retail mortgages or for corporate, but we lend it onto the market and we make money on that mismatch. People don't get any interest at this moment on their savings accounts, especially here in Northwest Europe. But what you see, of course, is that people are going to seek another return. So we see more and more also with the technology that is around us, digitalization, we see more and more platforms created to go directly to the clients, to finance you directly without having a bank in between. And I think that is where the future of banks will also go to. So we will be more and more a platform between investors who want to invest in companies, and our ability, of course, we have 50 years of experience, our ability as a bank to find those clients for those investors and bring those two together. So smaller balance sheets and more managed accounts together to see how can we bring demand and supply of money together, make sure that the client has the possibility to grow their business and the investor to make a return on their investment. And I think this is a nice bridge then to Michiel, because you also, of course, see a lot of this liquidity coming into the market. So maybe you can explain a little bit more about these alternatives.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Indeed, this is a trend which has started, of course, already a few years ago, and as a result, we have seen less and less bank debt available for financing new shipping projects. First of all, there's of course plenty of money available in the market. You also hinted to the low interest rate environment, and the low interest rate environment forces pension funds, insurance companies to look for yield, and yield also in the loan market. And in the past, it was of course quite efficient. They could, in the past, they were financing the shipping industry, but they did it through funding the banks. These pension funds, insurance companies, they provided bank funding, and they relied on the banks then to do origination, find new clients, new projects. They relied on the banks to use their industry expertise, to understand the shipping industry. They relied on the banks to structure transactions, the structuring expertise. And ultimately, by funding a bank, there was an automatic diversification of risk from a pension fund perspective, because at the end of the day, if you provide a 500 million funding line to a bank, maybe only 5% of that is being used in shipping, and 95% on other sectors. So that worked very well for these institutional investors. And now we see an increasing demand from the market, but also from these institutional investors to go into direct lending, rather than only financing the banks and be an indirect lender to the industry, become a direct lender industry. But that means that these institutionals, they need to originate themselves. They need to develop the industry expertise themselves. They need to be able to structure a transaction. And there's not really an automatic diversification of risk for them anymore. They take concentrated shipping risk if they do a certain transaction for a shipping company. And that is not an easy process. We are in constant dialogue with the institutional market, and they also struggle. They struggle to really understand the industry, to build up the expertise themselves, to originate, of course. The ability to take on that concentrated risk is not easy for them, and that's also where we try to play a role, hand-holding them in that process. What certainly doesn't help either are two factors. First of all, over the last 10 years, of course, the shipping markets have not performed well. There's been a lot of losses reported by various shipping companies, a lot of points in the market where the market traded at very low levels. And that doesn't help because these institutions very much work on track record. Secondly, it's the ESG factor. Is it green enough? Is shipping green enough? And what we continuously try to explain to these institutionals is that the maritime industry is in a green transition. And by standing on the sideline and just wait until the maritime industry is green enough in 2050, that doesn't help. If you want to make a difference as an institutional lender, you actually have to help now and fund the green transition. And that's the message we try to get across to them. And I think they are receptive to that, increasingly receptive, which is good. So it's slow, but the trend is there that we see more direct lending from institutionals. And we see already initiatives, credit funds here in the Netherlands, but also in Norway, in Germany, in the UK, whereby institutional money is funding these credit funds to lend directly into the shipping industry.
Thank you, Michiel. I have to start interrupting you there because of the time.
Sure.
I also want to ask you a question. You just mentioned in recent years the shipping markets have not been performing greatly. There are some great challenges ahead. Sustainability, for one fact. The thing with the shipping market is that always, if you want to take such steps, quite heavily investment is needed. From an investor's perspective, how attractive is the shipping market at the minute?
Yeah. It's I think we should be a little bit blessed by Corona as well, because investors think about alternatives. What are my options in terms of investing? And in the past, we struggled a bit to, as an industry, to, for example, compete with aviation. Aviation was more the darling of the institutional market because of the solid track record financially of that industry compared to shipping. But of course, Corona crisis appeared, and cargo transportation, as Peter also pointed to, has recovered during this year. Whereas other options, commercial real estate, aviation, leisure, which were real focus points for these institutional investors, they of course are no longer viable options for them. So I'm actually hopeful that COVID will actually help us a bit in getting this funding into our industry.
Thank you, Michiel. Michael, also one question for you. I recently read a report on Splash that said asked the question if banks are slowly falling back in love with shipping again. Is that as an IBC? How do you view that?
Well, we have always loved shipping. Like I said, we are there for 5 decades. I think that around us, we see that banks are withdrawing from shipping. The German banks, the English banks, a lot of banks are withdrawing from shipping. So I would not say that they fall in love with shipping again. But yeah, we as a bank have never lost our love for shipping, because we do understand that it is a volatile market where you should not have companies that have high leverage at high values, because markets can collapse. We have seen that multiple times, of course, over the years. So, for us, if we look at shipping is a market which needs flexible companies that can adjust. Peter already said that, if you are fully to the oil and gas market, try to diversify to wind and other markets to make sure that you have stable income from multiple markets and not concentrated in one. Be forward looking, because we know that the next crisis can come. So make sure that it is not a surprise to you, because that is ultimately what is important, to make sure that you manage your stakeholders, whether it's a bank or an investor or a shareholder. You need to be able to inform them. And if you as a company are transparent, forward-looking, stable, diversified, flexible, and you have a good management, I think every bank will fall in love with you. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Michael. There's one viewer question for you from Prabhakar Prakash. I hope I pronounced it correctly. That is a very specific question. He wants to know if you fund marine assets acquisition for projects in India. I think that is more of a personal question, so maybe you can have a little chat with you amongst yourselves. We will now go to the next part of the program. Thank you, Michiel and Michael, both, for your attendance and your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next two guests are seasoned Project Cargo forwarders who will share how they are responding to the current situation. Please welcome to the studio Managing Director of A Projects Netherlands, Maria Verbeek, and Director Global Business Development of Lubbers Global Freight, Jaap Kroon. Maria, Jaap, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Thomas.
Let me just start off with one question. We saw a poll earlier asking how people feel about the Project Cargo outlook. If you look at it yourself, how do you feel about the current outlook for the market?
I think, in my opinion, we should be really still be positive. The market will for sure change, but we see a huge consolidation with companies, joint ventures, and I think we will go back. The Project Cargo will be for sure be complex, but the volumes wouldn't, in my opinion, wouldn't be less.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jaap, do you share that view or?
Yes, although I think there, in certain cases, projects are already funded, so they are waiting when they can start. But because of the COVID, and you never know if there is a second wave, there is also uncertainty about delays in this case.
Maria, Jaap mentioned uncertainty. I think over the past few months we have had a little taste of what a second wave could mean. Can you just elaborate a little bit on how the past few months have been for you?
Sure. Yeah, we had a few challenges. First of all, we started a brand new office in Rotterdam, so the startup of our office. And second, I think 1 month later came the corona the epidemic. And that was quite a challenge. We just finalized the setup of our office. We had meetings with the subcontractors, the people we wanted to work with. And we were lucky to have some customers that we brought in. And but we realized that the projects that they started working on had some delays. So we were facing challenges like higher rates, detentions, of course, and also there are a lot of countries that seriously had a lockdown, so it was physically not able to move the cargo to these countries.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest challenge you faced?
The biggest challenge for us was the branding at that time. I think how to bring A Projects in as a branding, and I think we did a lot for social media. The startup was a good thing. Yeah. We worked a lot with LinkedIn, and but I think we're still positive, and it gave us also the opportunity to think in a different way how we wanted to work, and with what kind of tools. And that is in a traditional area where we are working in for the freight forwarding industry also necessary, I think.
Yeah, we will talk about that more this afternoon as well. Lubbers Global Freight has been very active in the oil and gas markets, which is probably one of the hardest hit markets worldwide. How has it been for you?
Yeah, that was a harsh period. It was not only the oil price went down, but also the COVID, so it became double. Luckily, we were able also to attract other kind of business, also already the last year. But again, we went down with the figures known. And,
And in this time, I know that when we spoke last year during an interview, you said, okay, we want to be a niche player focusing on difficult markets. You mentioned a number of those markets then were oil and gas, which was key, and there was dredging, radioactive markets like that. Do you feel you can rely enough on those markets to sort of weather the oil and gas storm, or?
Yes and no. By being a specialist in the oil and gas market, what has high standards in the project, and being a specialist also, what you mentioned, for instance, in the radioactive, that gives also opportunities to other industries. Because if you're able to do it here, you're also able to do it in the aerospace or in the maritime or the dredging. So there's always a need for specialist companies with engineering backgrounds, like in what was also mentioned earlier in the presentations, The renewable market, we're also entering that. So it gives also opportunities, what I see.
Okay, thank you. Maria, would you say this is a time to diversify as much as possible, or how do you view strategy at the moment?
Yeah, diversity is a key thing. Like I said, we come from a traditional business, and I think we should also, we were meant always to go, if we talk about Project Cargo, think about the oil and gas sector, think about the offshore sector. But there are for sure different market segments, which are also very important, related to infra, for instance. And I think we also learned from the previous recessions that we have to adapt and we have to change. So, and very often the segmentation comes and the diversity comes with the clients as well, with the customers as well, because they are having these projects in different segmentations.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned previous crises. The oil and gas markets are now down, but about 5 years ago, we sort of experienced the same kind of thing. Would you say that has sort of prepared you better to deal with the situation now, or?
Yes, I think the transition went quicker now with COVID, because we were already used to adapt seriously. But I think it's also time that we think in a different way in how to handle the project, the total freight forwarding as we do now. Normally, the traditional freight forwarding requires now additional services, like Jaap mentioned. It's more like engineering, and I think it's time that we make a next step to these services as well.
Okay. Jaap, these kind of services, how do you develop that if you don't have any prior experience, especially in a market that is also not at its strongest?
Yeah, it's also in other industries where you can develop it. We see more and more, for instance, on the aerospace business coming to us, although the aerospace is down at this moment, but it's a start. But again, it gives you the opportunity to develop it because there's a demand for these kind of niche players who can add extra value for these kind of projects or / moving cargo. Coming back, what Maria said, what is difficult at this moment is doing the direct sales. So there's absolutely a topic also for us, and we are on daily basis discussing that. What should be the next step in developing your company? Because cold calling and coming into an office is hard to do at this moment. Yeah. It's easier for people if you have your old network. That's you can call people and they even want to see you. But if you're a new player, it's more difficult. So we are thinking about it. We are making progress in that. So for us also, a new step in developing how to do the sales.
Yeah, and Maria, you mentioned that we have to new company. We have to build it in this time. Jaap also mentioned it's difficult to get insight with companies. Cold calling doesn't work. Especially for launching your business in a period when this is happening. Yeah. I can imagine it's really tough to sort of build confidence with customers. They might think, hey, we'll stick with what we know. Have you found a solution to sort of overcome that? And what is that solution?
I think the solution is also having a very steady network. There were some customers that knew what we were doing, so but we changed also the setup in having meetings with teams. And in the beginning, it was very tough, of course, sitting behind your laptop and putting your headphones on and having this conversation. But what we notice is also that our clients and customers adapt to that situation. So we do the meetings through Teams and Skype, but slowly we will go back to physical meetings if that is possible, of course. But I think we do also a lot through social media, and we had to work on our marketing and sales concept very much, and that is different. We spoke earlier about setting up how to bring in younger people to think out of the box, be innovative, be creative in a way to approach your customers.
Okay, so you both mentioned think differently, be creative. How creative are we going to get? What kind of new services are you thinking about? We've heard talking about the offshore wind market, engineering. You offer something unique. Will we see more and more freight forwarders also develop those kind of technical engineering solutions, or?
I think yes, there's a market for this way. Luckily for us, we have also the assets, the wheels, the trailers, so that helps also because you are already one step in for certain companies, and then you can start developing. But it takes a long time. These kind of projects and developing, engineering, etc. Sometimes it takes 1 year. And and do you have in this kind of period when the market is down again 1 year? So that's constantly the trade-off. So we decided also to look in other markets. Also the general cargo, what was not really our core business, but it's your bread and butter. And we did that also via some WizKids, via the online market, etc. It's a new way for us. Do we want to develop that further? Yes or no? We are actually in the middle, in the phase of that. But it's interesting to see because these people also they think really different. And but it can be also a start of completely new things in how we want to develop our platforms. So,
can you lift the curtain a little bit of what it is you're working on?
No.
It's gonna be okay.
It's
okay. Clear. Okay. Are there any questions from the viewers? Then we would love to take them. If not, I will have one last question for both of you. Looking ahead, you've started a new company. You said, okay, we need to build our network. As a freight forwarder, you depend on different sort of transport modi. There's shipping, there's air freight, there's road transport. We saw in the beginning when the pandemic hit, we saw a lot of air capacity going down. How are you currently managing your logistics supply chains? And how will it change going forward, you think?
I think what you see now is a very demanding industry for road transport. Transportation is increasing, I think. Air freight as well, but more expensive, of course. That is one thing. But I think the level of capacity, in my opinion, wouldn't change so much. That I don't know what you're thinking about this.
Yeah, for us definitely. In the beginning, the whole air cargo market went down, and is still down with at least percentage, especially in the international market. Prices went up, are still up. The market is competitive because there's less cargo. So you have also to squeeze your margins. So although you make more turnover, your margin is less. So it's constantly a trade-off and a balancing act, what you're doing. The same is going on in the shipping market, what we saw also in earlier presentations. So it's difficult, but on the other hand, we manage. And we have a few people who are well acquainted with the air cargo market or are coming from the air cargo market. And that helps. And with your deals. And,
thank you. Okay, thank you, Jaap, Maria. Thank you both for your insights. We will continue with the program. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a look at a practical business case of Rhenus Logistics right here in the port of Rotterdam. After that, we will have a 10-minute coffee break and then continue with the second part of the day in which we will talk about the opportunities of going digital, as Jaap and Maria just also mentioned. Thank you for. We will see you after the break.
Arnold, can you tell us where we are today?
Yes, of course, Twan. Welcome here at the Rhenus Deep Sea Terminal on the Maasvlakte in Rotterdam. Here on the Rhenus Deep Sea Terminal we have the ability to service our clients with a large variety of logistical solutions for their products. And today we are here to witness a project which is the transfer of a 188-ton transformer from a barge vessel into the floating crane of Bon & Mees, which will then eventually be installed at the other side here of the channel at the TenneT land station.
Hello, good morning, Maurits, working for Bon & Mees. Can you please tell us what is happening?
Yeah, good morning, Twan. Today we are working on a very nice day. We are lifting a transformer. The weight is 180 tons. It just got delivered this morning by barge. We are picking it up, lifting it in the hooks, and then we are sailing a small distance, about 2 nautical miles, all the way to the quayside, where we put it on SPMTs.
Because in the afternoon, this SPMT will travel all the way over Maasvlakte 2 to its final location at the TenneT site, right?
That's correct, yeah. At the moment we are on the Boskalis Puma Quay. This afternoon at 4 o'clock we will transport the transformer over the premises of KWS towards the entrance. And this evening at 10 o'clock we are allowed to go onto the road to transport the transformer towards the job site of TenneT.
Well, Arnold, thanks for today. Luckily everything went all right. Are you happy with the result?
Of course, as always, Twan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers.
In our personal lives, more and more things are going digital. A friend recently laughed at me for paying with my plastic debit card at the cinema. Just use your phone, he said, while he leaned back in his chair, upped the thermometer at his house by 1 degree and paused his favorite TV show for when he'd get back. I'm not exactly a tech-savvy person for someone my age, and I believe that is because I work in the project cargo industry. In this particular field, we are often considered to be dinosaurs. One man who is definitely not a dinosaur is our next guest, Mare Straatmans. Carrying with him a vast amount of experience in port-related startups, he recently took on the position of Director Digital Transformation at Van Oord to help the offshore contractor reinvent its processes. Mare will tell us how the company is doing that and how you can digitalize a non-standardized industry.
Good morning to you all this morning at the Project Cargo Summit 2020. I'm really happy to present today you a little bit about digital in our sector. My name is Mare Straatmans and I'm the Director for Digital Transformation at Van Oord. I have a background in the Port of Rotterdam, working at the Port of Rotterdam Authority and Port Excel, building Port Excel as the founder. And now I'm working at Van Oord and still involved with quite some startups. The objective of today for me is to share a little bit about what digital is and why we should bother about digital at all. So if we talk about why digital, I think we can state that the world around us is changing a lot these days. New technologies are coming at us, whether you're talking blockchain, VR, artificial intelligence, so many new technologies are coming that could be potential for our business. But also, more and more companies are challenging the status quo. A beautiful example, for example, is Tesla, of course. They've not only challenged the automotive industry, they have totally taken over the automotive industry. And if you think what that means for the automotive industry, it's very fascinating to see what that means. So I think this is also relevant for our sector. There's a lot of intransparency in our sector, which means we're also potential for disruption. We have stated 3 reasons why we want to bother with digital. The first one is clients. We see that more and more clients are expecting more of us in reporting, in knowing what's happening, reporting on emissions, knowing the status of projects, where's my cargo. So we want to serve our clients better, and that's where digital comes in very big time. The second one is our people and our operations. There's many people in organizations doing double work, doing Excels. I think we are an Excel-based sector, which means a lot of potential on mistakes, on duplications, on miscommunications. So also helping our people and making our business more efficient is a big objective for digital. The third objective for digital is new revenues. It offers a lot of potential for different companies to start new services for their clients, which have also new business models behind it. So these three reasons, clients, operations and people, and growth, are the key drivers why we do digital in this age. Now let's talk about digitalization in our sector. Digitalization is something pretty new for our sector. It's something most companies that I know are just engaging on the journey of digitalization. But it's crucial. We know that now, and everybody starts to see the potential. There are three elements that I want to stress with regard to digitalization in our sector. First of all, transformations are hard. Transformations are always hard. The existing way of working works. People are not so eager to find new ways or to try new ways because it's a risk of things going wrong, new things failing. So people are generally not so eager to transform. So transformations are hard, and like McKinsey says, digital transformations are even harder. So that's one reason. The second reason, I think, what digitalization looks like in the sector is the understanding of digital. I think we all need to better understand what digital is to be able to lead this digital transformation. And I use this picture where you can see that it is about 4 steps in digital. It actually starts with user value. Somebody needs to get value out of digital. And that's not where most of us started when you think about digital. Most of us started data. And data is actually not the objective. The objective is some user having use of the data and making a decision that creates value. I always use the example of buienradar. Basically what you want to do, you want to know, is it going to rain? Do I need to take an umbrella? Yes or no? That's your decision. That's your user value. For that you need an app. You need to look at the app, and the app is going to tell you, yes, next 2 hours there's going to be clouds or not. Below that, of course, is all kind of meteorological data, information, which is fed by all kind of sensors that feeds data in these meteorological data over information. So this understanding of what digital is, coming from data to information to insights to user value, I think that's crucial to understand. Most companies understand the bottom part about data and information. Very few people focus on the user value and the insights, and that's actually where the adaptation of digital starts in business. So for me, that's the second point on digital transformation in a sector. And the third one is leadership. To be able to make a difference in a sector, you need to have leadership that understands digital and leads digital. And that requires different skills. The new skills are very much about, being open, being hyper-aware, being humble about your own position, trying to connect with others. And that's not what we're very used to in a sector. We're a very closed sector that sometimes feeds off intransparency. So this transformation in leadership and leadership skills is a huge factor for this digitalization in our sector to accelerate. So the companies that are able to grasp these skills in their leadership skills will be more successful in the coming future, is what my expectations is. So these are the 3 elements what compose together the position of digital transformation in our sector. Okay, and then my final part of my presentation is to explain you a little bit what we're doing with digitalization in Van Noord. We focus mainly on a framework that exists of 5 components. The middle 5 ones are creating value for the company. It's about creating value for our clients, for operations, or new growth. That's basically where the core value for digital is, as I explained earlier in my presentation. There are 2 additional ones, and those are what we've called the movement and the data. The movement is about getting everybody in the organization on the journey of digitalization. This means communication, telling everybody what we're doing, but it also means strategizing, helping business units to make strategies. It also means making partnerships with other people in the sector and other organizations. So the movement is everything about growing digital within the organization and outside the organization. The final part is, of course, the data. Without good data, you're kind of lost. So the quality of the data and increasing the quality and the governance and everything around the accessibility of data is a crucial aspect. So what we try to do is to, in parallel, to grow our maturity in this so that we can increase the speed that we offer value to the business. So that's the final pillar that's crucial for us. So what does it mean in practice? Basically, we're running all kind of different pilots with the business to make impact for them. 2 examples that we've now done, saying, hey, we run ships, and ships do projects. The ships do a lot of trips every project. How can we better optimize the planning of those trips? Can we have a simple tool that helps the people in charge to make decisions on the trips and how the trips are being performed? Another example is for our commercial people, we're focusing very much on the clients. Our commercial people want to have better conversations with our clients. So can we help our commercial people to have more and better information on our clients when they're having these conversations? So these are 2 pilots where we've built some first applications that's now being used in the organization. So this is a little bit about what we do within Venoord. If you want to know more than happy to share. We have a Q&A after this, so please ask me any questions. I hope I inspired you a little bit with my views on digitalization in the sector and Venoord, and looking very much forward to the rest of this summit.
Mare, thank you for that interesting presentation. I'll just quickly hook onto that myself. You said we should not think from a data perspective, but from a user value perspective.
Yes.
But sometimes, if you don't look at the data first, you don't know exactly what you can extract from it. How do you sort of start your journey there?
Yeah, but how can you start? It's actually the wrong way around. If you start with the data, it's like, you start looking at roads. I always make the example with roads and cars. So what we do, we build for the business a beautiful car. And the business says, wow, I've got this great car. Now I want to drive to Paris. It's okay, that's cool. But if you want to go to Paris, you have to put down a road. And the road for me is the data. So the road is like the data is like the infrastructure that facilitates the car going to Paris. If you're going to look at a random road, saying, hey, let's look at all the roads. Hey, we have a road somewhere in Ukraine, and we have a road somewhere in England. Wow, that's cool roads. Let's see where we can drive. That's the wrong way around, because you've got a client that wants to drive to Paris, right? So we start asking the client first, where do you want to drive? So that's the other way around. So you start with the user value. The problem is then, okay, so what if you give the client a car and you say, here, you got a beautiful car, and it says now he wants to drive to Paris, and there's no way to drive to Paris because he wants to drive to London. There's no way to drive to London because there's a big water between, right? So then you have an issue. And that's where you step in, and you're going to find other solutions to give the value to the client. But not starting at the data, because I don't believe that's the right way to creating business value in the company. Of course, you've got others, groups of people in companies and experts outside that do very smart stuff with data and then find the clients with it. So there is a way of doing that. But I don't think that's what companies should be doing, especially not when they're at the beginning of their journey.
Okay, thank you, Mare. There's a question from you from Albert-Jan Ars, and he asks, how do you see this roll out? Would you say companies need to do it all each for themselves, or should you be using the force of the community like they are doing with the Port of Antwerp, he says?
Yes, it's a beautiful question. I think for me, I've got a perspective on ports and maritime, like a bit broader perspective, also internationally. In my role for Port Excel, I traveled from Busan to Houston. I think this is a sector problem. So I always say, and I'm also working in it, so I feel that I can say that, but we're 10 years behind. There's so much stuff already. If you read the McKinsey's on digitalization, this already started 12 years ago. And actually, we're now just starting it. So one of the things is that as a sector, we need to step up. So I think it's really good, like they're doing in Antwerp, and it's on more places in the world, that this is not just a company by company thing. So that there's like a community development of this, increasing awareness, increasing knowledge. But it's both. You cannot do it without the companies. And what I see in our company, but also in other companies, it's a huge challenge because you're working with people that don't know what an internet browser is. So how are we talking to, I want an interactive platform where my clients can see the status of my projects every minute of the day. When you're talking to somebody in leadership that doesn't know what an internet browser is. So I think we have a challenge on the community level, on the sector level, clearly, because not doing this, will keep us, with problem with sustainability, with economical viability, because you're just not competitive enough. But it's also a company challenge because you need to educate people. You need to help leadership understand what's possible. You need to start developing the skills. You need to start attracting the talent that can do this digital within the companies. So clearly it's both, but I also very much like the community approach.
A very concrete question from Vasily Kotilevsky. I hope I pronounced correctly. Have you seen any useful app or startup related to the Project Cargo market already?
I've seen thousands of startups, so I probably have to start digging. Yeah, what I would say, I cannot. For me, it's very difficult to hint one that's very specific because there's, I think, all different kind of economical activities and niches. But ones that I very much like are around transparency on schedules. So when are ships leaving, when are ships arriving? So the whole that's happening a lot in ports. I think that's adding a lot of value to the planning for the whole supply chain. I've seen a lot with regard to drones, like inspection of a cargo, inspection of infrastructure above water. I've also seen a lot of below water inspection. I think there's more and more coming in tracking and tracing. So I think there's quite some potential in a more up-to-date status of where is the cargo, what is it doing, where is it going, who's responsible for it. I very much like the very concrete ones that do like the hull cleaning. So you have all kind of robots that start to do hull cleaning. I think about things like ballast water treatments, those kind of aspects. I think the number of technologies that you see developing here is extremely diverse. I am generally more, my personal heart goes more out to the ones that are not the most cutting edge technology. I'm not the big front runner in, AR, VR, blockchain. I think that there's very big potential there, but I always very much like the very concrete stuff that can do a difference, can make a difference today. And there's a lot. I also recently saw a startup that does help reducing the fuel consumption of ships with injecting some additional stuff into the engine. So there's a multitude of startups and technologies that come into this place.
You mentioned that this industry is sort of almost 10 years behind the curve, so to speak, in terms of digitalization. You could see that as a sort of a late starting point, but you could also see it as an advantage because so much stuff has already been developed now. Would you say that makes it easier to now start in digitalization, or?
Yeah, we have a good saying for that. You can talk everything straight. I like to keep the urgency. So for me, there is an urgency in we as a sector don't look around us enough. There is so much happening in the world, and we don't have enough vision on that. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we are too far away from the end consumer. If you're Nike, Facebook, or Nestle, and you miss one of the latest trends, you're out. Literally within 1 year, they can be out, right? For us, that's a bit different. So we have to put in more efforts to see what's happening in the world. But yes, of course. There's one side to your story that's true. We can take things from other sectors. We can learn from other sectors and bring in stuff that's very useful for us that we don't have to develop it ourselves. Still, there is so much in every company needing to understand digital, needing to have their own people that even if you take something from outside, you have to implement it. It's a totally different way of thinking, right? We're waterfall thinkers and we have to go to agile for everything we do. So the change is still enormous, but yes, if you want to talk it straight, there are some advantages of being late as well.
Okay, thank you. There's a question for you from Dan Boersma. And he's asking what the biggest hurdle at the moment is to effectively use data in order to create user value.
Yeah, so I think the biggest hurdle is, and that's again with the client value, is what I call adaptation. So what I see is that there are tools being made. So people in an organization make tools because somebody says, hey, let's make this let's use this data just as we started. This data, if you put these two data together, we get insights, and it's very useful. The question is, who's going to look at that useful data? Who's going to look at that insight, and who's going to take a decision with that insight? So who's the guy that needs to know I'm going to take an umbrella or not? And what is he looking at? So I think the biggest hurdle is actually that we start with somebody again that has a value, that has a decision to make, and what does he want to look at? And so he just wants to see next 2 hours rain or not. So okay, and then we go to the data. So I think for making the data to work, that is the biggest hurdle. And then I think you have tons of other challenges, differing per company, the amount of data you have, the quality of the data, how well you are situated to access the data and to bring it to the next level of insights. There's so many challenges there as well. But I think the first one that we all need to get is that it's not about the data, it's about the user value, somebody that needs to take a decision.
Okay, so one last question about Van Oord. In many ways, Van Oord is a front runner in offshore installation, in dredging, in all those quite advanced technological works. When looking at digitalization, you mentioned we are still at a sort of a starting point. How fast can a company catch up, so to speak, to modern standards?
Yeah, beautiful question. That's basically my KPI, I say. So I hope within 2 weeks. But I think, it's a little bit again. It's if you split it up in the one part is for me the transformation, what I told about user value and the company understanding and building skills, and the other part is the data. Yeah, I think it's. I don't have had a deep dive in all the companies. I think you can start and make a difference within a couple of months, actually. But to be really on a next level, and that's not the front runner, but a next level digital, I think it takes 3 years to make really. If you start now with the right people, knowing your data, improving the quality and the governance of your data, and the accessibility of your data, changing the platforms and the way you think it. It's very much also the philosophy behind it. It's not just doing it; it's the right. If you do it with old philosophy, you're building the wrong stuff, and you cannot accelerate later on. So. Yeah, I think these are real big journeys for companies.
Okay, thank you, Mare. Thank you very much for your time and for this interesting presentation. We will continue with the next part of the program, and that is also about digitalization. The coronavirus has tested us in many ways this year. It challenged our resilience as well as our ability to adapt, which Mare just talked about. With international travel having become extremely difficult, companies have had to find new ways to continue their work. It turns out a lot can be done from home. In fact, our next speaker moved 3 massive modules from one Chinese yard to another without ever leaving the house. Please welcome Frederik Einaar of Logistics Plus, who will share his experience and the lessons he's learned.
So this is a story about how we, Logistics Plus, used some innovative technology to deal with the COVID-19 situation in China. We had gotten the order from our customer Wärtsilä to transport 3 modules from one shipyard to another in China. Now the modules, they are pretty big and pretty heavy, weighing 80 tons, 218 and 425 tons each. And the idea was that we would load them at the one shipyard on a pontoon barge. Then we move them to the bonded logistics zone for some special customs clearance. And then we bring them to the other shipyard where they would be offloaded. This whole project had been in preparation for more than 1 year when, obviously, end of January, early February, COVID-19 started happening. Now, usually when we have a project of this size, I would go to China to attend the whole operation in person. Because of COVID, this was now not possible. So what solution did we find? Well, I asked our surveyor that we always use, even if I go there, we have a third-party surveyor who attends the operation to make sure that everything happens safely. So I asked this person, Mr. Fidel, if he could represent us during the loading and the discharge. We prepared everything even better than usual and I gave him all the drawings, all the details, all the detailed instructions. And while he was on site at the loading yard, I was at home behind my computer using WeChat, which is a kind of Chinese WhatsApp/Facebook combined, and it's a very useful program. So he was on site and he kept me up to date minute by minute, sending pictures, sending short movies, calling me whenever necessary. So I could really follow step by step what was happening 9,000 kilometers away in China. It felt a little bit like I was in Houston and he was on Apollo 11, except this time we had a bit better technology and a much faster connection. Was this really necessary, you might ask, that I be kept in the loop so closely? Well, yes, I had been the person who has been preparing for this project since over 1 year. So I knew all the in and outs of this particular move. To give you one example, on the day before the loading in the supplier yard, our load spreading beams arrived, and the supplier didn't want to load them to our barge because they did not have lifting eyes. Obviously, Fidel, he reported this to me at once, and I contacted our local office, who managed to find a welding company who could still weld lifting eyes on the sides of the load spreading beams. So that's just one example of a problem that was solved from 9,000 kilometers away. A second and perhaps more important issue happened after the modules were loaded, after the modules were shipped to the bonded zone, and when they arrived at the discharging yard, our surveyor, Fidel, he was there again. Again, he kept me up to date, minute by minute, sending plenty of pictures, and suddenly in one of the pictures I noticed that they had hooked on the 425-ton module, but when I studied the picture in detail, I thought something was wrong. And I checked my drawings again, and turns out I was correct. They had hooked on the module wrong. To take you back one step, and you can see this in this visual, you will see that one side of the module is heavier than the other side. Because of that, and to keep the module even in the hook, because they had a single hook, not a tandem lift, in order to keep it even in the hook, they had to have an auxiliary hook pull on the heavy side to make sure that the cargo was in balance. Now, what had happened in the discharging port, in which I had spotted in the picture, is that they had hooked on the auxiliary hook on the wrong side. Of course, when I saw this picture, I immediately told Fidel to stop all operation and to have them double check it again. And well, it took half an hour, 1 hour, but finally they did indeed realize that they had hooked it on the wrong way around, and they switched the auxiliary hook to the other side, and then they could continue to safely lift the module into position on the new building vessel. So this, in a very brief nutshell, is how we used this new technology, WeChat. Well, call it new, it's been around already for like 10 years, but how we used it to monitor this very important operation from very, very far away. Me from my home, and Fidel in the loading shipyard and in the discharging shipyard. Maybe I can tell you a little bit more about this program WeChat, because it's quite interesting, I think, for all of you to learn about this program. It is the #1 program used in China by pretty much everybody. You can use it to send messages like WhatsApp. You can use it to book a taxi. You can use it to book a restaurant, travels. Basically, you can use it for anything. You can even use it to pay for stuff. So it's a very useful app, even in such a way that nowadays communication through WeChat has more or less replaced communication by email for many Chinese. So that's also the power of this WeChat tool. I did not only use it to communicate with our surveyor one-on-one during the operation, but at the same time I also had a group where all the people involved in this project, like our surveyor, our local office, the customer representative, the operation manager from the shipyard and the commercial manager from the shipyard, the owner of the barge and the captain of the barge. All of them were in one group, and then this allowed me to very easily communicate with all of them. And whenever there was a problem, like these loading beams or like hooking on the wrong way, I could simply make a sketch from my desktop, send it to the group, explain to them in Chinese or in English, but I speak Chinese as well, so explain to them in Chinese what was the problem, and they could very easily evaluate and find a problem. The drawback or the less positive thing about WeChat is that it's very instantaneous way of communication. So even though I use WeChat a lot for instant communication and solving problems like we did, I also always send an email to our customer and to all the parties involved to reconfirm what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. So this kind of concludes my little presentation of how new technology combined with old technology such as email can be used to properly manage big and important projects from a distance. I hope you found it a little bit interesting, and I'm very open to answer any questions you may have in this respect. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Frederik. We will now first go to the next speaker and then have a joint Q&A session with Liebherr and Logistics Plus together. But before we go to the interview with Christian, I want to ask you your opinion about remote working solutions. Do you think that we will be working more and more often remotely as a result of this pandemic? And if you could please just sort of share your opinion in the chat, then we will first go to the interview and then get back to it in the joint Q&A. Okay, thank you. Christian, welcome. Our next guest, Christian Lübke from Lieke. Liebke was also forced to find a COVID-19 workaround. The company had to install a crane in Argentina when the travel ban hit and prevented them from going. A remote maintenance app that was still in its beta phase at the moment proved to be multifunctional. With me is Christian Lübke of Liebherr to tell more about this project and the future of remote solutions in the heavy lift industry. Christian, welcome.
Yeah, hi Tobias. Thank you to be part of this summit, and it was really good to hear all the participants before. Yeah, as you mentioned already, we worked already on such an app. We started with this years ago because we recognized that sending engineers all over the world is not efficient enough, and also the hurdle to find the right guys who are willing to travel all the time, all around the world. It's getting not easier during these times, and also for our customers, which are most likely also not direct close to our mixed sales companies, has also the advantage to be helped faster, to get the cranes faster back in operations.
Okay, and can you first, before we dive deeper into how this app helped you in the COVID-19 pandemic, can you first describe a little bit about what the app does exactly and how you intended to use it?
Yeah, okay. What does the app does exactly? It sounds like, okay, some kind of Skype, sometimes of Teams, but it's more or less a live stream to the engineer or also the customer on site on the crane, which is connected via his mobile. And we have this live stream. We have the functions of a chat. We have a whiteboard. We can freeze the screen. We can give direct instructions to the display of the mobile. So we can really work live on the machine out of 10,000 kilometers, for example.
Okay, thank you. And with COVID-19 disrupting all sorts of processes, you had to use the app in a different way, installing a crane in Argentina. Can you tell a little bit about how that process went and how you used the app?
Yeah, the crane was fully disassembled, and our customers know the fully disassembled crane needs to be assembled. And normally we are sending 2 engineers from the factory, and to assemble the crane, it took about 3 up to 4 or more weeks. It depends to the country and the support and everything. And now we faced that the crane is already on his way. It wasn't possible to travel anymore, so all flights were cancelled. Everybody knows this. And we have our mixed sales company, the LIPA Argentina in Buenos Aires. And we start to think about how we can assemble the crane, because it was also the first LHM 420 in Argentina. So our colleagues hasn't had any experience with the machine, but we decided, to help our customer, because he bought the crane because he needs the crane. We start to think about, can we use this app to make this assembly works properly, safely, and for the customer at the end of the day, good and in the quality he expects from Liebherr. So, we did this advantage, I would say, and it was afterwards a really great success. And the customer is happy. The crane is handed over. It's in operation. So our mission is completed for this crane. And we learned a lot out of this. We used an engineer. He was previously planned to assemble the crane in Argentina. And we asked him, are you willing to do this remote assembly? And he said, yeah, why not? He adapted his working time to the Argentina time zone. And at the end, it worked out. It was really good. Really nice experience.
And I can imagine that a remote installation offers some efficiency advantages. I can also imagine that when installing a crane, even if you do it remotely, you need to have people on site that have the expertise of working on cranes at all. So when you look forward, is this a way of working that you will be doing more, or was this a one-off? Or
from the efficiency point of view and financial point of view, it is a really big advantage. But as you said, we need to have experienced guys on site that they know what they are doing there. Even if they guide it remotely, you need to have good engineers there. We want to use this tool more or less for troubleshooting, so for helping the customers if he has a breakdown. And normally the crane has a breakdown when he is in operation, so the vessel is blocked and he needs immediately support. And if we think on the customer is maybe 1,000 kilometers abroad, we need to send an engineer there. He has to fly. So the customer is losing a lot of time, and we want to be more flexible and faster to help him.
Okay, so
but it's possible to use this app for installation crane, but this is not the biggest advantage of this app.
Okay, so you will focus on troubleshooting. How will this work in practice? I can imagine that if you have so many cranes around the world and there might be some problems at the same time, that you also need to have enough engineers who can manage this remotely. So what does this mean in terms of your organization?
Yeah, absolutely, Tobias. We need to have experienced engineers. They need to know what they are doing, what they are guiding, or how they are guiding the people in front of the crane. So we need dedicated engineers. We need the experience, and we will have to have engineers afterwards sending through the road, because how they could get the experience if they are not traveling and visiting the customers, working on the machines. And what we also want to do is with this troubleshooting, to send the engineer, because if we have the troubleshooting finished, most likely a spare part is needed. So we want to send the engineer with the part together to the customer to fix the crane. This is also a main advantage out of this. Not to send an engineer, make the troubleshooting and recognizing, okay, now I need the part and I have to wait again 3 days. So yes, we need dedicated engineers, but we still need engineers who are willing to travel.
Okay, and if you look forward, there's because now you mentioned it's a Skype or Teams-like function, but with a direct connectivity to engineers. Of course, technology nowadays makes it possible to add a lot more functions. If we look forward, In which direction is this app moving?
Yeah, the app is moving into the direction the customer wants us to move the app, and also for us. So it should be a benefit for both sides, for us as a supplier, as a manufacturer, as a service provider, and for the customer as the customer. So we as you said, we are in a beta sequence, and the customers are invited to use and share with us the app they're using. And out of this experience and also the feedback, we will decide how the app will be developed in the future.
Okay, thank you, Christian. We will now have a joint Q&A session also with Frederick. I already see there are some questions coming in. Christian, the first question is from you, and it's from Mark Bambury, and he asked for remote working solutions. What do you have a process in place in case of an accident?
In place of an accident, if an accident happened during remotely advertising, or so it depends. Yeah, if you have an accident and the customer asked us to look into this with this app, yeah, for sure we can help him. But if there's an accident, the engineer should be on site. And if an accident happened during guiding through the app, that are some cases we are thinking about this, because so we have to create our borders where we are going and where we have to stop the remote servicing.
Okay, thank you. For the viewers, if you have more questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll try to ask them as much as possible. In the meantime, Frederick, I was wondering, now that you have done a successful move all the way in China, where you were able to spot mistakes made by the local employees, if that is a success story, is that something you will be doing more in the future?
Well, yes, I think, like I also said in the chat, I think all of us has had the experience now that we have been forced to work from home. And I believe most of us has found that it is actually quite good. We are able to connect to colleagues, to connect to customers via meetings like the one we are having now, via Teams or via other functionalities, where we find that actually we can much easier share data, information, drawings, sketches, and all that kind of stuff online. Even sometimes better, I feel, than when you have a face-to-face meeting with 20 people and nobody is saying anything of interest, or the beamer doesn't work. Personally, I have found that these online tools work quite well. In regards to the other part of your question, yes, we will be using this setup more often. Actually, just last week, we have done a copy-paste project of the exact same one we did back in March in China. So 3 more modules were delivered while I was looking on from home.
Okay, and I know that when we invited you for this event, you said, okay, I can, but I do have to go to China also, so, for a project that I cannot do from home. So where is the fine line between what is and what isn't possible?
That's right. Actually, I'm just back from China last week, and the reason why I did go to China for the other project is that there we were loading 4 big LNG tanks of 155 ton each on a BBC vessel. And during the loading operation, one of the tanks was coming over the other, and the actual stowage position, they are only 20 centimeters apart. Now, there's a lot you can prepare and do remotely with the right people on the ground. But when things get so critical as that one 150-ton cargo travels over the other one and then they land 20 centimeters from each other, well, that's a case where you really want to be on site, so that when you see that the 20 centimeter becomes 5 or -5, that you can stop it immediately. So there, in those kind of cases, it's a judgment you have to make, and here we judged that the risk is such that really I should be on site to make sure that I stop things when they get critical.
So if I understand correctly, it's a personal choice of how much in control you want to be of small details. Christian, how is that for Liebherr? When would you decide to do a project remote, and when would you never?
So one thing what we would never do is bridging safety and security limits switches. For example, this is something what can cause into an accident, and this is a risk we would never do. And we're in a beta sequence. We want to collect experience as much as we can, and just to have also something for us that we know how we can use it in a proper way and in the best and safe way. But we are thinking about to use it more often, especially in countries like Australia, where you have to fly 4 hours from east to west, and you can't be everywhere in time. So for these regions, this app makes really sense, and also in South America or also in the United States, where the distance are huge, not as let's say Europe, where you can fly from Berlin within 1 hour to the Netherlands, or 3 hours to Madrid. So this is really close. So.
Okay, thank you. I think there's an interesting question for the both of you. Christian, I will start with you. Mark Bambury asked, is there a risk assessment process to determine which project to go to? And if so, how do you assess those risks?
Not at the moment. So we are not working on any risk assessments or in using this app. So as I said, it's a test sequence. We are trying our best to collect data, to make the experience. And as the previous speaker said, it takes 2-3 years to have apps in place or programs, tools in place which are working properly. And risk are always there in a port. You know this. So each lift is the risk, and the terminal is making the risk assessments and everything around. And how we make this for using this app, it's most likely used by us, through us and the engineers on site and the technical guys from the customer. We have to know their knowledge, how we can utilize them to take or to make the risk on a minimum. And if there's a risk, we would stop it immediately. So if there's really the chance for an accident, we would stop it immediately. And
Okay, Frederick, for you the same questions. You already answered it a little, saying, okay, you have to determine for yourself when do I work remote and when I don't. But do you have a certain risk assessment process to help you in this decision?
Well, of course, it's not for ourselves that we determine this. Every project, every decision is always determined in close consultation with our customers. And obviously, as every good project forwarder, we also have a risk analysis of every operation. And then we share this analysis with the customer, and then we determine whether this can be managed remotely or whether we really need to have me personally going there. Robert, if I may, just slightly, because there was also another comment from Alain, who said that there is no substitution for brain work, and there was also a comment from Miriam, who said that even with these new tools, we always have to take in consideration cultural sensitivities, and I think these are also two very important remarks that I still wanted to briefly talk about, because as Christian also pointed out, his tool is really for putting an engineer, a live person with brain work, in contact with the people on the ground who are doing the actual installation. And same in our case, it was a tool used to make sure that the people who have the whole operation in their brain are in touch with the people on the ground operating this. And like Miriam said, even with all the online communication tools, the key is still communication. And this is very important in our business, I find. And also, I want to stress particularly the differences in cultural communication sometimes. This project that we had was a project in China, and then you also need to know how to talk to Chinese people and how to deal with Chinese people, which, as Christian will be able to confirm, is entirely different than what you do with Argentinian people. So my point being is, even though we have to use as much online tools as possible, there's no substitution for brain work, like Alain said, and for experience in cross-cultural communication.
Okay, thank you. I think that is actually a very interesting remark indeed. We have to move on to the next panel due to time, but for the viewers, if you have more questions for either Christian or Frederick, just write them down in the chat. I will collect them in a list and ask them later on, and we will get back to you with the answers on those questions. Okay, Christian and Frederick, thank you both for your presentation and the interview. Thank you. Okay, so before we go to the next panel, we will first watch a video message from Albert Straatmans from the Rotterdam Port Promotion Council.
Hi, my name is Albert Straatman from the Rotterdam Port Promotion Council. Together with the Port of Rotterdam Authority, we've created a project, cargo and break bulk community. These are the companies of the Port of Rotterdam, Schiedam, Moerdijk and other parts. And together we join forces to position Rotterdam as the break bulk and project cargo port of Europe. As a community, we participate in trade shows, we organize network events, national and international, and we connect all the companies together to position the Port of Rotterdam as the break bulk port of Europe. So, if you are interested in this community, please join us, help us, come with us, and join forces to create a very competitive port in terms of project cargo and break bulk.
Okay, so as we just heard from our previous speakers, digitalization is about efficiency, and in recent years, many shipping companies have tried to digitalize their booking processes. Container carriers have even implemented an airline or e-commerce model. In the project cargo industry, however, email and fax are often still king. It is commonly heard that the handling of complex cargoes like these cannot be digitalized. But our next three guests have a different opinion. Please welcome Daniel Mewis of Maersk, Bob Schrover of KVSA, and Alexander Vavrenko of ShipNext.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I will help you a bit in introduction. We have Daniel Mewis on the phone here because there's a problem with the connection. And then there's Alexander and Bob in the chat. There's three of us, so I will give each of you first the opportunity to introduce yourself and to say what the platform is you are working on. And from there, we'll have a panel discussion. Alexander, I will start with you.
Yes, hi everyone. So I represent ShipNext. We started this project in 2016. Myself, I'm 20 years in business, and some know me as also a founder of Varamar. Well, the work started basically from creating an algorithm, and while I speak, I will just switch on my screen so that you see it live. So we started working in 2016, and it was basically writing a very long algorithm, which is now over 700,000 pages long. It processes all the incoming emails, brings it to a platform, and you also see it in your email flow, and it shows you literally all the incoming real-time freight requests, orders, as well as all the ship's positions out there around the world. So it's an algorithm that can potentially pull you out of your email, which is very good for shipbroking companies, for shipping companies, because they can literally have a number of filters to filter out all the incoming requests in their scope or in their geographical area they manage, and then match it to the ship. It could be their ship or also the market ship, or one of the open ship positions they receive, and instantly match it. So for some brokerage companies, and we have recently signed an agreement with one of the five largest shipbroking companies. This is an instrument that will make them so efficient as to match and find the right solution in literally seconds. And so we see this as a process. We do call it a marketplace still, because there's still a lot of cargoes and ships are being circulated on the market. But we are now building terminals, which are corporate solutions that will basically transform shipbrokering companies, shipping companies within days, within a few days. It will be customary built out of the box and placed on their cloud or their service for them to transform within such a short period of time. And we see this going forward as a kind of an ecosystem where companies connect and interact with this smart algorithm behind the scene. And we see a lot of problem solving as well, because today, if you look at all the other options and solutions available, they have not been that advanced. You don't yet have, apart from ShipNext, any platform that actually processes cargo-related data. They do process ships' positions and so on, but never cargo-related data. We have our solution patented. It's now so the process of bringing emails and EDI and commodity marketplaces and freight auctions into one ecosystem. And we do connect rapidly now to ports, to shipping companies, to services such as Gmail, Sedna, FrontApp, LGMAR, and so on. So this is indeed a very important project for me and our team, and I think the industry in general.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. Bob, I will now hand over the microphone to you. If you can introduce yourself and tell a little bit about the platform.
Yes, thank you, first of all, for having us. My name is Bob Schrover. I'm from KVSA. KVSA stands for Koninklijke Verenigde Scheepvaartagenturen. In English, that's Royal United Shipping Agencies, but you might know us from BTS. We're founded 144 years ago, located in IJmuiden, near the North Sea Channel area, just before the locks you go to Amsterdam. We have a maritime and logistics department and a data intelligence department. As a logistic company, we are ship agents. We have 2 terminals of our own. I'm looking at one of them and see the ferry from IJmuiden to Newcastle. We do the daily departure for them. And we also have the Velsen terminal, where we have normally we have our cruise ships coming there, but that's a different story. So long story short, we have a big history in shipping, but now we're talking about matching ships and cargo in the digital age. So we have our BTS platform, and we do this since the 70s. In the 70s, it started with telex. One telex was sent to us. We will send the telex to our customers. That changed into a fax. The fax changed into an email, and now we have still the emails, but we also use our BTS platform to filter out the information which is be sent by brokers, ship owners, and cargo owners. It's like I said before, it's a marketplace for shipping companies and brokers. We will filter. They will send us the emails. It will run through our system. We will filter them and make sure there are no double emails, and we make sure they can search in these and save these searches to make sure they will find the right cargo or ship they need. And we will connect this information to the real-time IES data of the ship, so they can do directly business to the cargo or ship owner and directly do trade themselves. That's BTS. We are also advancing with other software solutions for the nautical port environment. We have, at the moment, we are developing Shipmate. That's an intelligence online platform to streamline the process of ordering provisions and other products. And it connects ship owners, ship and chandlers. And we're also building on Shipmate, that's built for the port community also. And we are launching that as we speak. And that's where we're streamlining processes in the port community. We can activate processes, registration, invoice automation, and communication, and that will make the port community more efficient. So that's what we do.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So we will now go to Daniel Mewis from Maersk. I have him on speaker here, so you won't see him on your screen, but you will see a photo. Hi, Daniel. Can you tell what you at Maersk are doing to accommodate the breakbulk in this industry?
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope you can all hear me quite well. And sorry for the inconvenience being on the phone rather than on the chat. So first of all, I'm Daniel Mewis. I'm heading up special cargo and dangerous cargo for Europe and Africa at Maersk. The reason why we basically believe in more digitization of breakbulk is, as you mentioned in the intro, it's basically purely based on efficiency. Therefore, I say we have to go back around 3-4 years when we decided to put extra focus onto this segment. Back then, we onshored additional staff to focus purely on breakbulk request and internal development of this segment, i.e. meaning training of staff and so on and so on. The baseline we had then back in the days was that we receive approximately 20 inquiries a day for the region Europe. And we then assumed that every inquiry might take around 15 minutes to work on, like basically from A to Z, inquiring terminals for feasibility, getting feedback, and then providing a quote for that one. But that actually, very quickly, we have then realized that this new focus we had put into place seemed to be highly appreciated by our customers. And then, I guess within less than a year, we had all of a sudden 80 to 100 requests a day for breakbulk out of this region. And that obviously ended up in at least more inefficiency than the other way around, which we plan to have with the extra focus. If we still assume the 15 minutes per inquiry times 80 or times 100 inquiries, then we easily end up with a huge backlog. What we then thought is, okay, we need to find different ways how to cope the workload, but to ensure that the turn times we are having to our customers is more efficient. What we then did is basically we on our Maersk.com, we enabled our customers to request breakbulk inquiries via Maersk.com, and behind that we installed templates and formulas which will allow our system already to do various pre-checks on certain parameters like dimensions, weight, port pairs, are there transshipments involved within our services, or do we even know the request already from other customers, or other certain limitations in place which we already know from the ports which are involved. And that basically all allows us to filter requests and give a lot input to the team which works on the front line here and sets the price and the breakbulk strategy to our customers. And that basically is what is the first step we have taken to drive the efficiency and to decrease the quote turn time to our customers. It might look actually that we lose the personal touch to breakbulk, but it's clearly not the case. So these formulas will only tell our our internal staff what's the matter with the individual inquiry, and then based on that, our team can prioritize or can decline certain requests, because then we have immediately information about the cargoes itself, or the routings, or the limitations of the ports. And then if the systems or our systems then also allows us already to say immediate no if we figure out that we won't be able to handle this cargo. We heard back many times in the past years that it takes too long from us to get even a rejection for breakbulk inquiries. And obviously, for us, it's very important that we are quick to our customers, but at the same time ensure that what we offer is also feasible to be executed. That's why we have not fully taken it to digitization at the moment, but we are having certain steps involved which leads into this direction. So if we look at the next steps we are going to do is that we are also enabling our customers to then place the breakbulk bookings onto in our webpage Maersk.com, so that will then also immediately connect the dots within our internal systems. Means then you can choose your vessel, you can choose your port pairs, And then everything is internally set up, and that means then all the ship planners, the terminals, the operation managers are getting instantly informed. So that also drives our efficiency forward and ensure that the turn time we are having to our customers is as quick as possible. I mean, if we look back to the times where everything was done via email, then we all assume basically that our frontline sales might be on the road, so emails get stuck in the inbox, and then until it gets forwarded to the right department, it takes another couple of hours. My team who do the break bulk pricing then also have 80 to 100 requests a day on the inbox, then we can all assume how it ends up in the end of the day, and everybody will be dissatisfied at the end. So that was clearly our ambition, to go the digital way forward. And there are a lot of plans we are having right now, which I cannot all disclose right now because it's not quite clear how we're going to translate them. But the next step will certainly be that you can also place the bookings online, so that that also decreases the quote turn, the booking confirmation turn time, and so on.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. If I understand correctly from all three of your platforms, the main goal really is to minimize the incredible amount of emails and make it a much more easy to look at package of what is out there. If we look at Maersk, for example, they in the container sector, they have made the booking of container super easy. You can go online and it's booked in a few minutes. Bob, do you think that is such a model will ever be possible in Project Cargo?
Well, what we see and what we provide is that we are like a marketplace. We connect the ship owner and the cargo owner, and in our way, they have to pick up the phone and just contact each other, because we think it's still a business to business, a person to person business. So we see in the market that they will keep it like this. Yeah.
Alexander, I think you may have a different view on that. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, before we started on our project, in fact, a lot of platforms and similar marketplaces went out of business, and one of the reasons is that there's always a chicken and egg situation with the amount of business you have on the marketplace or on a platform, right? And that is because companies. Let's take the case of Maersk, right? If I'm a customer, do I want to key in, let's say, 280 pieces from the packing lists into their platform? No, probably not. And this is one of the problems why in project business, if you want to be direct, closer to the client, you have to be ready that he will just simply not bother keying in anything. He will send you an email. In a best case, in a larger case, he will have an EDI in the best case scenario, right? So that all the information passes by all the middlemen and then goes directly into the Maersk platform. But in 99.9 cases at the moment, this will be an email sent by a customer. Then, if not Maersk, if they have no time to process emails, they will send it to a forwarder or any broker or logistics company that will then possibly find the time, if they want, to key in that data on Maersk's platform, and maybe any other platform like CMA CGM if they come up with one, and so on. So that's still a lot of inefficiency. You still have a lot of business every day. So you're just, what Maersk would then do in this case with their platform is just shift the time of processing email from themselves onto someone else, and give a possibility for forwarders to get, let's say, more feedback from their platform if they find the time to key in all that data.
Okay, thank you. There is a question for you from Miriam Zekak, and she asked, what exactly do you think that your platform can match ship brokers in the because he says usually the ship brokers and cargo owners communicate directly. So what can your platform match there?
Well, no, not necessarily. Look, our approach, and before I do, let me just show you our position. Let's say to companies like Maersk, is that we are that connectivity point. So we process emails and we bring it to a digital form, and then we can easily connect it to Maersk's platform or CMA CGM. We actually have agreements with some container lines already. So we are that source because every day we have 90,000 cargoes being processed already every day. And that's apart from the ships' positions and so on. So what we do, our approach and our vision on the market is that any broker is a trader, is a professional trader. All the other industries except shipping have already moved to a marketplace or a trading platform or digitalized their trading platform already. Shipping is only doing it at the moment and mainly with us, right, in place. So, and there are companies that can afford or not afford to have that professional trader in their company, and this is why some ship owners they work with an exclusive or semi-exclusive brokers. There are larger companies that have internal logistics or shipping managers, they're called, or chartering managers, or outside chartering managers or ship brokers. And this is all these ship brokers are in fact those traders that should be on the marketplace. Now, how they will be on that marketplace? Will they use a centralized platform, or will they be able to afford a kind of a terminal to attach to that marketplace? That's a different topic, and this is why we are now working on this out-of-the-box solution, which will be out in 2 months' time.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, your platform basically is aimed at smaller and medium-sized companies who will not have their own traders.
The central solution, yes, but this company that I told you about, they ordered a terminal, and this will be an out-of-the-box solution. So all their 105 brokers around the world will, in one day, switch to a platform. They will not have to read any more emails. They will have one or two maybe analytics who will just clear up the emails that were stuck somewhere and not processed. And so they will just stay away from emails from that moment onwards in their matching process and in their calculations. And every one of them will then be able in that terminal and the smaller brokers on the marketplace connect and see the freight index which we have today for non-containerized shipments, because today on ShipNext you have an immediate valuation of how much it costs you to ship any non-containerized cargo, heavy lift cargo, break bulk, dry bulk, but we will also add containerized freight. So platforms like that of Maersk is welcome to connect so that any client out there, any broker out there with non-containerized cargo can immediately also get Maersk's quote right in front of their eyes.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. For you, I know you have now the quotation platform for break bulk. I did recently see that Maersk is introducing a misdeclaration fee for wrongly declared out-of-gauge cargoes. Do you think that this platform will help solve that problem, or is this still a problem, and how do you try to filter that out as much as possible?
So yeah, it was a huge problem, and it is probably still a huge problem with us. And that is purely related to vessel utilization and vessel slot calculation, basically. If we assume, or if somebody inquires just something with overheight, for example, then and then it gets booked with overheight only, and then you figure out that the terminal tells you it's also over with on both sides, etc. Then obviously you have a complete wrong planning of your ship. And that causes huge issues at our vessel, at the terminals, and that then creates, obviously, it could create a delay in vessel departures and windows and terminals and so on and so on. So what we are doing with these extra or the misdeclaration penalties is also not straightforward. That if somebody gets or declares something wrong, then he gets immediately the bill. That's not the case. It's more the case that we are notifying our customers that there is a different dimension been taken, or you still have the chance to advise what is the new dimensions. Only if we really figure out if as soon as the vessel, the container or the flat rack is next to the vessel or in handling of the terminal, then we figure out that nothing has been declared or nobody has basically reviewed the dimensions, then this penalty comes into place. And that should help this misdeclaration, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And as Maersk being one of the front runners in the container market, where digitalization of booking processes is quite advanced, How do you view the possibilities in a oversized and out-of-gauge market? Will there ever become a time where the booking of these cargoes will be as effortless as a container, or?
I think we have to differentiate between the simple out-of-gauge stuff, like I don't know, let's take it over height only, or let's say 3 meters width and 3 meter high and 34 tons, where we assume that every terminal we are calling can also handle those stuff. I think that's more likely than the more abnormal dimensions we are looking into Project Cargo also. So there will be a lot of manpower needed and a lot of staff needed to check the feasibility with the higher dimensional part, with the smaller ones where we assume every our terminal can handle. That might be the way forward indeed.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there are many more interesting questions to be asked, but I have to start closing because of time. Alexander, Bob and Daniel, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, with that panel, we have concluded the first day of the Project Cargo Summit. I hope it has been interesting and that you've gained new insights and identified new opportunities. Tomorrow we will be back and we will talk about how we can create a better multi-purpose and heavy lift fleet. We will do so with Esplendor, Konoship, DEC and ACT. We will also take an in-depth look at the opportunities in the renewables markets, which we have already touched a bit on today. What can you expect from the hydrogen markets? And what major gaps can there still be filled in the offshore wind market? You will also tomorrow. For now, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Project Cargo Summit 2020 is made possible by Port of Rotterdam, Liebherr, Lubbers Logistics Group, Mstar and the Steinweg Group.